A very good evening. So there are 4 weeks to go until Election Day on June the 8th, an election that's been called by Theresa May 3 years ahead of the legal requirement, because she says she needs a strong mandate in the Brexit process ahead. Well, no general election should be about one issue. It's not a referendum after all. And there are so many challenges facing Wales and the UK beyond that Brexit question. But there is no escaping the immediacy of the Brexit issue right now. The clock is ticking, of course, on the Article 50 process. So for this first of our election editions, we'll be exploring the Brexit question from our Welsh perspective.
It is important to define, of course, and consider what a bad Brexit might mean and the different kinds of bad. What she might consider to be a good Brexit, I fear could be a bad Brexit for Wales. So what we need, I think, is to be in a position where we work towards a departure from the European Union which genuinely reflects the different needs of the different parts of the UK. Wales being a net exporter, for example, we should be able to rubber stamp that deal. And that's where I hope we'll be hoping with Plaid Cymru. I believe defending Wales in that respect.
Even if we don't have any sort of a deal, even if the Germans don't want to sell us their cars and the French don't want to sell us their wine, our goods will still be more competitive David, than they were before the vote. This
is where we come down to the nitty-gritty. How much would those tariffs be, for example, on agricultural and food produce? Well, we're looking at possible tariffs of 40%. And what do the food producers and the farmers in your constituency, for example, think of that?
You're right.
We can't think no deal is an option.
The tariff thing is such a big issue because until we know what kind of tariffs we're talking about...
I'm glad we've moved on now. We've accepted that we can trade without any sort of a deal, and we're accepting. Hang on. Of course. Thank you. That is exactly the point I was trying to make. And now we can. Now that we've established that, now that we've established this important point that anyone can trade with anybody, now we can talk about tariffs. Subject to tariffs. So let's talk about it.
Can I perhaps bring it back to what we are hopefully meant to be talking about here, which is the effect of all this on Wales, because it's defending Wales's interest.
I thought it was all in the Welsh context myself.
All in the Welsh context with the UK.
But when you're talking, okay, I accept that. But when you're talking about the EU being net exporters to Britain, let us concentrate here, as Huw said at the outset, on Wales being a net exporter to the EU, for example. Wales being more of a beneficiary of European funding, for example, than the rest of the EU. And those specific elements that we need to take to the table in negotiations on leaving the EU that have Welsh interests at heart. We heard those people in Blaenau Gwent, and it's something that I hear time and time again. Nobody is listening to us here in Wales. I feel that. And we need to make sure that our voice is heard, or our interests will be ignored.
There are tens of thousands of EU nationals in Wales. That's clearly a block of people whose rights have to be addressed. There are British people in other parts of the EU, their rights too. And I'm putting that in the context of the importance of freedom of movement as well, given that that's one of the main planks of our deal in terms of the single market. On freedom of movement, has Plaid Cymru changed its tune?
We are very, very clear that we need workers from across the EU and beyond to keep our public services afloat, to help in our economy in many, many ways, in the agriculture sector, in the hospitality sector, for example. We need to be able, in the post-EU world, to have our say here in Wales on the kinds of immigration that will help us here in Wales. I've heard what people have said about wanting to take back control. And one of those elements of control that I think we can have, if we put defending Wales at the heart of our thinking, is to have, for example, regional visas. So we can say we need these workers in this particular sector.
How practical is that?
It works in Canada, for example. It is a process by which somebody has a visa to work in a particular part of the UK. Here in Wales, for example, in the health service. So we can attract those people.
Okay.
We hear David Davis here talking about scare stories about people being thrown out of the UK, when his party is the one that's responsible for the scare stories, frankly based on no evidence about the negative effects that these immigrants from the EU have, when they are clearly net contributors to our economy. One thing I'm very worried. Yes, we do know that for sure. Of course we know that,
because nobody's ever done a proper cost.
One thing, if I could just continue, if I could just
the OBR, actually, David, today the OBR had a report talking about the value of
what people have tended to do is to look at the fact that the majority of EU workers are paying taxes. What they've never tried to do is to cost the amount of benefits, not necessarily unemployment benefits, but the cost of social housing, of NHS benefits, of education and so on. Never ever been done. Never been cost and benefit.
One fear I have, as Plaid Cymru's shadow health secretary, is we need people from the rest of the EU to come in and work in our public services. Will we be able to retain those EU citizens that are currently working in the NHS now? I sincerely hope so, and I can't imagine a situation where they would be rounded up, to use your words. But how many people out there in continental Europe who might have considered coming to work in Wales to help us deliver the health service, for example, will not now be coming because of fear of coming? One of the elements of the bad Brexit that I fear is being brewed up by the Conservatives at Westminster, as opposed to the best possible deal we could have, which we'll be seeking, is not just in relation to the negotiations with the European Union, but also the internal discussions within the UK, the kinds of guarantees that of what happens to, for example, funding, or what happens to common agricultural policy support for farmers. I'm sure we'll get a guarantee here this evening from David Davis, as he's given a guarantee on immigration that the funding will come. Of course, he's not in a position to give that guarantee. And we know, for example, that when it comes to not just money, but the powers on how to spend money, that UK Conservatives are planning to hold those powers when they come back from Brussels in Westminster until such a time as they can be divvied out to the nations. I don't accept that is a rock-solid pledge that we need here in Wales to defend our interests as a nation. And this was put to Parliament. It was voted down after Plaid Cymru suggested this. Let's have a guarantee on future funding. We haven't had those guarantees. I don't blame those people in Blaenau Gwent for thinking that nobody's listening to us.
The powers that will be repatriated, what will happen and what should happen to them, Rhun?
It's back to this business of taking back control. I mean, for those people who took that particular phrase seriously and wanting to repatriate powers from Brussels, I don't believe that they, in Blaenau Gwent or anywhere else, wanted to see those powers being brought back from Westminster and given to Westminster when those powers are over devolved areas, already devolved areas in many cases, agriculture, economic development and so on. They should be coming back to Wales. And I think it's section 4.2 of the Great Repeal paper that says quite clearly that powers, are in danger of going back to Westminster, with then a divvying out of those powers later on. I don't accept that is a practical way forward. We have these 2 years. Now, it was always going to be 2 years. By the way, that's the way the Article 50 process works. And in that time, what we need is an assurance that those powers, we need the working out in this period of how those powers will come straight back to the communities of Wales.